for this morning. It looks similar for those that were here last month. We will do our one-word check-in, our grounding statement. Then we will jump into our core team updates, and we will do our best to cover all of them. If we have conveners that are not here, we will update you in our newsletter. And then we have our special guests today, Julie Mowrer and Maile Boggeln from the Hilo's Center for Community Engagement Campus Center. And we're happy to have them here to present on their GEAR grant project. So welcome, Julie and Maile. And thank you for being here today with us. And we look forward to your presentation. And as always, we will have time for participant announcements, and we will be available for any questions or connection kuka at the end of our meeting today. So without further ado, we will get started. So in that chat box, just to check in this morning, share one word or phrase about your spring break. So we have rested, yay, ku'uhi ako. Short, yes, absolutely. Family, awesome. I had to work, so I didn't have spring break. Short, calm, aw, sick. Sorry to hear that. I hope you're feeling better. Too much work. Yep. What break? I got you there. Yep. Well, if we had a chance to pause and take a rest, that's fabulous. For those of us that had to continue to work, I hope that we get a chance to rest in the coming weeks. Mahalo, guys. Appreciate your participation. For our grounding statement today, we are going to take a deeper dive into this statement. Our kuleana is to convene conversation so that all va'a can travel toward a common goal. Build community awareness, will, and action from the foundation of our shared values. Shift deficit narratives, systems, and policy that perpetuate poverty and inequity, and implement strategies that are developed and resourced by the community and reflect Native intelligence. So we will have our breakout rooms again, since that was a hit last time. Where Ku'uhiapo is going to send us into breakout rooms. We'll have 3 to 4 minutes, and just as a team, and this is super informal, but just pausing to take a moment. What does this piece of our grounding statement mean to you, and how can you contribute to our shared kuleana here at Vibrant Hawai'i? So Ku'uhiapo, back to you to shoot us into those breakout rooms. To the next section. I know we don't have all of our conveners on the call this morning. So we'll just do our best to cover what we can. I'm going to, the first one that we're gonna call is Kuhi Kuhi Mentorship Program, which is a mentorship program that focuses on helping young adults land their next job. And we have our convener, Ku'uhi Apo, to share with us some highlights this morning.
Hello, everybody. Good morning. Yeah, so some updates about the Kuhi Kuhi Mentorship Program. We successfully launched it last month with our workshop, the first workshop, and it went very well. I'm sorry, not last month. It was this month, actually. It was this month. And yeah, the workshop went very well. We had just a lot of good feedback from the community, from our potential, from our prospective mentees, as well as the mentors that we're working with. We were able to connect with our enthusiastic mentors, one of which is Paola on this call. Yeah, right now, what we're currently doing is we are still connecting our mentors and mentees, and we will be doing so until April 8th, which is the second workshop that we'll be putting out, which is AC in the probation period. And so very exciting stuff. And yeah, that's all the updates I have for Kuhi Kuhi.
Mahalo. And next up is our digital literacy program workshops that teach individuals with no experience and the skills to utilize technology. Unfortunately, Noel is not with us this morning. and wasn't able to provide any updates. So we will move on. If we do have updates from Noel, we will put that in our outgoing newsletter for everyone. Mahalo.
I did meet with Noel. Do you want me to share what I've learned?
Oh, sure.
What
If
the
you
project is?
have some, yeah, if you would like to share some updates, you have updates. Absolutely. Mahalo, Rachel.
Yes, yes. So I met with Noel and Janice on the digital literacy project, and they're coming to the end of the grant period that supports this project. And there's, I think they serve 65 participants, but there's still a few on the list who are interested. So they have their last push to get the rest trained and supported. After that, they intend to do sort of an evaluation of the report and share that. They were also looking into what's the best way to transition after this grant period and what could be the next step. Because clearly we know that I think some initial data that 500 of our residents could have benefit from this project. But even with 65, and at the college, we also have a version of this modeled on after the community college. I believe we've only been able to serve 20 or less than 20. So we got room to do more and to reach out more people who would benefit from this. And so what we're hoping to do after Vibrant Hawaii does their evaluation report, the college, for which we could continue to build capacity, could learn from the model. Because remember, the college model is you bring everybody, you sit down for 3 hours and you get that training. And Vibrant Hawaii has really shown how it could be more community-based. So I'm hoping that we can learn from their lessons and maybe remodel and reframe our capacity in order to reach the rest. So that's sort of how we're moving into the digital literacy. In addition to that is also coordinating with the digital Palina initiative that's happening at the statewide level, led by our state librarian. And what kind of capacity ongoing that could also be available through our community centers and our libraries to support ongoing digital literacy. So that's one step. So right, this is the very basic. The other one that we should probably continue to have conversation as a community is then the next level. It's how do you skill up? And the state has capacity through North Star, but how do we bring that to our educators? How do we bring that to communities for those who are now ready to take level 1, level 2, or Harvard level available? And how do we bring it to our K-12, to our preschools, to our college students? So the literacy as a whole really it's expanding, and we're taking sort of our steps to get there. And I'll pause there, see if there's any question. My understanding that the funding for this particular project ends this month, if I didn't mention that. So we should get the report next month.
I thought the funding for that was somewhat elastic, Rachel, so I'm kind of surprised to hear that, but I'm excited to see that they were able to reach a lot of people.
I'm not sure on elastic. I think maybe this particular funding that kicked this off is from the county, and I think the funding is ending. Maybe there's an opportunity. I know one of what we were discussing is where do we transition it to? So perhaps where the elasticity come in is there should be a way to kind of transition, whether it's through us, the community college, or through additional funding through the resilient hubs, because it so far demonstrated success more than what we're doing at the college. So definitely maybe the county funding would end, but certainly we would learn from it to restart or to continue it.
At our board meeting, also Janice mentioned a transition to the library-based program. Yes. That was another possibility.
So we did discuss that, and Janice found out that the digital Palina program from the library is not a training program the way we envision it. So we were thinking they would then, now, I think right now, the most that they're doing is providing equipment and space and access to North Star. So then you then have to have a certain skill, right, to be able to go online and start to kind of pick up North Star. We're still attempting to touch those who doesn't even know how to use a mouse, or so
Yeah.
that 500 still, I think it's a gap.
Thank you, Rachel.
Yeah, mahalo nui, Rachel, and we will continue those conversations as we move forward, like you said, with transitions and new iterations of this work. But mahalo nui for jumping in and sharing. The next core team is PAPA, our Passion and Purpose Academy, sharing passion and purpose through online credentialing. Ku'uhiapo, do you have any updates that you could share with us? Janice is not able to join us this morning.
Sure, yeah. I think the only update I can say is we are still redesigning the platform. It's improving by the day, all thanks to Ken Wong, who has been a much help with us with the coding part of it. We have, at the moment, I think we have 2 published courses, one of which is Kuhi Kui, the other one is a business development course. And these 2 courses are more like a mock-up and in a way to present to our team within Vibrant Hawaii, and hopefully a way to, it's like a good example for just our external partners in the community who would like to build their own course. So that's where we are right now, and but definitely if there's more updates, we will update everybody through the newsletter.
Next up is our Showcase Transformational Learning Project, sharing passion projects to initiate conversations and networking opportunities. And that is Julie Mowrer.
Hello, everyone. So for the past maybe 5 months, we've been really focusing on the projects on Hawaii Island that received funding from the GEAR grant award from the governor's office. And I think, you know, those of you who have been at these, they've been just these amazing projects for transformational learning, for students, for faculty, for teachers, and for community. And so the purpose of this is really to give a sense of what kind of what we're thinking about with the deficit narratives, right? And shifting away from that and really thinking about what can be in education and showcasing those efforts, and then thinking about how we can, as Vibrant Hawaii, help to sustain or grow those efforts through our capacities, whether it's social, individual, you know, financial, all of those capacities that we talk about at Vibrant Hawaii. So that's been fun.
Well, hello, Judy. Yes, it's been super nice to hear all of the presentations and go around the island, so to speak, and learn what all of the different projects have been doing. So thank you, mahalo to you for putting that on for us. Next up, we have our internship inventory and best practices, compiling list of internship programs on Hawaii Island, and that work is done by Caroline Landry, Rebecca Joy, and Julie Mowrer. And I believe we have Caroline on the call this morning.
Hello. So I'm gonna put the notes in the chat if anyone's interested. But so what we're doing right now for the internship inventory is showcasing some excellent programs that we have in our community and trying to learn from them. So this week, so we're doing that every other Thursday. And last Thursday we had Akamai, which is a mostly STEM and astronomy industry based summer internship program hosted at UH, formerly hosted as UC Santa Cruz, but in Hawaii. And week before that, we had the PIPES program also hosted at Hilo, which is an ocean base and a Pacific Islander focused program. And we learned a lot, and we continue to learn and documenting what they do and what works best practices. And so upcoming April 7th, we have Kaylin Surf from the Coeducation Center who will be presenting. And then April 21st, we have Heidi Dagaran from Kamehameha Schools to present the Kapili Hoiana. And then on May 5th, Jason Uwiki from High Plan will be presenting about the Tropical Ag Tech Conference, which he is putting together and will be happening in Hilo in June. So those are all great real life workforce experiences. And if you would like to learn more, we have in the notes that I posted in the chat, we have a link to like the list of all the internships that we are looking at, that we have on island, and other information as well.
Mahalo, Caroline. And yeah, I believe in the notes too. Anybody who would like to join these conversations or attend some of the showcase presentations, there's a link to the meeting there. Or go on vibranthawaii.org and RSVP to their core team events. Caroline, I think you're also up next. Is there for our career navigator? This is providing career navigation services to increase meaningful work and engagement in the community. And again, it's convened by Caroline Landry, Rebecca Choi, and Julie Mowrer.
So thank you, Tamia. So the career navigator is to try to bridge a gap with, we have a lot of resources for workforce development in our community, but science has shown that adding a human touch and having a person that can coach a young person to find out what's their calling and go find these resources and highlight a path for them to get out of their low-skilled, underpaid jobs to a life-sustaining job that requires a coaching and guidance. And so we're trying to learn from other programs, and we're working also with, we're trying to find a government entity partner, like we spoke with Sharon Hirota from the county. And next week we'll speak with Sarah Godale from is it American Jobs Plan. And also we're talking and learning from another entity called the Hawaii Workforce Collaborative, which is a funders group, all the larger foundations in Hawaii trying to get together, learn, and decide on a course of action for workforce development. And the career navigator idea came partly from them. So if you are interested in this project, this is going to be our next project. Right now we are in the design phase and exploration phase, and the work should kick in the summer. So let me, you can contact either three of us if you would be interested in joining or learning more about this work.
Mahalo, Caroline. And yes, anybody who's interested in joining, please reach out. And lastly, we have Aina Aloha, promoting Aloha Aina or Aina Aloha through quarterly activities. And so I'm happy to announce, I am the convener for this team, that we will be having our second quarter workshop on April 28th at 10 o'clock, and we will be working on our marketing and promotion. And so we are happy to be able to have Kahelena Halea, and she will be doing a workshop on Kilo. If anybody here was able to attend the Mahina workshop by Pelika Andrade, I believe that she's going to kind of build upon that presentation and frame it around Kilo. So I'm super excited about that. It is going to be between an hour and a half long session. But like I said, we will be promoting that shortly. So look out for that on our Vibrant Hawaii website. And if you want to get in touch with us or want to join in the work that we do, feel free to also go on vibranthawaii.org and to join our RSVP to our convener list if you would like to be a part of that. And that is my segue, maybe not so smoothly, into our two fabulous presenters this morning. So now it is time to jump into our presentation. And we have Julie Mowrer and Maile, and Kalamai, if I'm pronouncing your name wrong, Boggeln. And they are presenting this morning on access to education and opportunity to serve. And this is their year grant at UH Hilo. So welcome, both of you, and I'm gonna turn it over to you. Do you have slides that you need to share?
We do, yeah. So let me, there we go. All right. So thank you. Aloha, everyone. I'm Julie Mowrer. I oversee the Center for Community Engagement at UH Hilo. And that has a range of interesting projects and things that we do. But primarily on the academic side of connecting students' academic work and studies to community and bringing community in as well. And for this project, for the GEAR grant, we collaborated with Student Affairs and Campus Center. And so I'll give Maile an opportunity to introduce herself as well. And then she's going to start our presentation for us.
Fantastic. Thanks, Julie. So as she said, my name is Maile Boggeln. You are completely correct on my last name. And I work in our campus center as our student organizations coordinator, and I also coordinate our Kalamaku Student Leadership Development Program. And I specifically look at student development and work with our students who are in our living learning laboratories or our chartered organizations. And so before we get too deep into our presentation, we'd love for you to get your input on a few things that you're seeing in education. So we would like for you to think about and remember the world at the turn of the century, which was just 22 years ago. Many would say that the world has changed a lot in that short time. So if you could enter into the chat some descriptive words that describe how we've seen the world change in the 21st century, that would be fantastic. Anybody else want to share? Digital learning environments, a focus on family. Yeah. So now let's think about the students themselves. The original model of education over 100 years ago in the US was largely based on a student population that was white, male, and had a certain amount of privilege to focus solely on learning in their 4 years at university. So what do our students look like today? More diversity. Yes, and a focus on equity and inclusion, more diverse cultures and genders. Usually not like the faculty who are teaching them. Yes. Digital narrative natives. Yes. More aware of heritage and privilege. Absolutely. And so really everything that you guys are saying reflects a lot on why Bonner is so important to the work that we're doing and transformative education at UH Hilo. So the world is changing, and one of our favorite quotes is that uncertainty is chronic, instability is permanent, disruption is common, and we can neither predict nor govern events. We really do have a changing student body on our campuses. At UH Hilo, 74% of our students are local students, 49% of them receive Pell Grants, which is indicative of coming from a lower socioeconomic background. And we are consistently rated one of the or the most diverse public four-year institutions in the nation. And so when you look at that and you also combine COVID-19 and that students are feeling excesses of anxiety and hopelessness, and that's at an all-time high for students, but also us as faculty and staff, it really drives home why Bonner is such an important program. In fact, we all know that in order to self-actualize, which is one of the main goals of getting a college education, you need to have a solid foundation, which includes basic needs, both physically and mentally. And an information from a UH Basic Needs Master Plan, which was actually released this morning, included data from a spring 2021 survey that indicates that 64% of UH Hilo students in that semester were experiencing at least one form of basic needs insecurity. 26% were experiencing issues related to having family that was affected by COVID-19, and 47% were dealing with moderate anxiety. So this is why the Bonner program is so needed at our campus, and it's directly addressing current needs from our student population, while also allowing them to grow as students and future community leaders. So when we take a look at what the Bonner program is doing, we have 10 learning outcomes that align with the world and what our current students' needs are. So interestingly enough, some of the things you guys identified in our opening questions align directly with what we are doing currently in the Bonner program. So we're looking at things like perspective thinking and communication. We are focusing on new ways of communication, including technologically being competent in your communication. We're looking at social justice and diversity competence, which directly aligns with the need for inclusion and equity in the educational and community sphere. So all of those things are really being addressed by the learning that we're doing here in the Bonner program. So we would like to introduce you to the face of our Bonner students and this year's cohort. So you can see all of our students with some biographical information about them. They come from Hawaii and beyond, majoring in fields across campus, from business to Hawaiian studies to marine science. But really, most importantly, they're all human. They have experiences that go far beyond who they are showing up as in our classrooms. They've experienced homelessness, adoption, learning disabilities. Some have immigrated to Hawaii without speaking any English. Some have had to give up dreams and start over. Some have dropped out of elite schools to care for their mothers and siblings and their family members. Some have seen their parents lose everything in the 2009 recession and watched them build back piece by piece through the years between now and then. So these students are the ones that we are here to serve, and they deserve our very best that we have to give. So now that you know a little bit more about the students that we're working with, we'd like to talk a little bit about the kind of framework of the Bonner program. It's a 4-year program designed to move students from understanding themselves and place to gradually taking on more responsibility and leadership roles, both in their work and in the community. So year 1 is really focused on developing their dynamic and their bond as a cohort, which includes a service trip. And this weekend, they're actually going to be heading up to Hakalau for a 3-day weekend to deepen their understanding of place and contribute to its care. The types of service that they're doing is direct service, meaning they are serving meals or tutoring, and it goes directly to our community. And they can choose to do a full-time summer internship during that year. In year 2, it builds on the leadership and digs deeper into the issues that are important to them. They typically choose an organization, government agency, or public school that they want to work long-term with, finding that sweet spot of academic interest and career goals, and also aligning it with a community need. And their service moves more towards leadership roles, such as recruiting and training volunteers. And then in year 3, they shift even more deeply into that direct service model, and they are working on capacity building. So each student and their mentors, academic and community, design a capstone project together based on the interests and ability and community needs of that student and what they're wanting to work on. And then in year 4, we begin to move more towards post-graduation needs, things like interviewing, resume writing, budgeting, public speaking, and connecting them with an alumni network. Really, what is so fantastic about the Bonner program, and I really want to make sure that I highlight, is that there is a reflection of their learning, and they do a presentation to the public of their journey and their learning throughout the program. And really what makes Bonner different is that it embeds Kolb's experiential learning model to engage Bonner leaders in the creation of the curriculum as mentors and leaders as the years go on. So not only does this prepare students for leadership post-graduation, but it makes the program more sustainable overall because they're kind of taking on the kuleana and responsibility of the program as they move through it. And then another really key aspect is that we have a fantastic and very active alumni network. So they're able to connect with people who have also gone through the Bonner program nationally, which builds on their ability to move on after graduation and embed themselves in whatever community they choose to live in. And so just a little bit more about what our students are doing kind of on a weekly basis. The students meet together as a cohort for about 20% of the time. And this is really used to connect them with guest speakers and representatives from community organizations. They all come and talk about any service activity before they actually go out. And you can kind of see a list of some of the workshops and guest speakers that we've had so far this year. This allows them time as students to process individually and with their peers about what they're learning. And because students are in a cohort, they really developed a bond. And so they're more comfortable with discussing the uncomfortable topics. And it gives them an opportunity to process and digest things and this information, which allows them to build meaning for themselves, which in the end makes the experience more impactful for them. And then the other 80% of the time is dedicated to direct service. So they experience a variety of types of service projects and they get to work with multiple organizations to build connections and begin to discover what really resonates with them. This will lead them to making longer term commitments with the organization for summer internships and potentially multi-year projects and capstones. And so you'll see some of the groups that we've worked with for direct service this year. I will throw it out there that it's been kind of difficult to do direct service because of the pandemic. And we're really hoping that that'll be an opportunity for growth as we continue the program. And then one thing that I really want to throw out there is what makes this program different and why that 20% of the time in class is so important is because in a lot of other models, students tend to go into the community and provide service, but they're also not necessarily provided with the context and background of how power, privilege, and intersectionality affect the work that they're doing. So that can lead to potentially having extractive interactions with the community rather than them giving back to the community. And ultimately that can be more harmful. So what is so fantastic about the Bonner program is that it is created with the intention of having these students spend time learning about the intersectionality of power and privilege before they go into the community to work with those who are directly on the ground and doing that work. And I will go ahead and pass it over to Julie to talk a little bit more about the program.
Hello, Maile. So this quote, I'm just going to start with this, that says that well-resourced students often have access to powerful learning experiences. Equity demands that all young people have access. And so one of the reasons that we really were drawn to integrating this program instead of many of the other programs that exist or creating our own is that it's a paid program for students. So we know that volunteerism can be one of these powerful learning experiences for students. It's required, no, I shouldn't say required, but often requested when students do scholarship applications, when they apply for jobs, they're looking at, what has this student done to connect with people outside of just sitting in a classroom, right? But the reality is that our students that we see today, and particularly the students that this program seeks to serve, don't necessarily have the privilege of time to do unpaid work. And so that for me is an important aspect, is that these students are compensated for the time and energy that they give. And that widens the door to students being able to choose to do this rather than caring for their, not rather than, but rather than taking a paid position somewhere else where they may not have the learning, growth, and opportunity that this program provides. So this slide depicts high impact practices, which are practices within education that have been shown to have the greatest impact on student learning and growth over time. Lists vary on what those, can look like, but they're pretty much agreed upon. There's about 11 in total. And so within this program, over the 4 years, they integrate 7 of those high impact practices, including learning communities, shared intellectual experiences, community-based learning, collaborative projects, internships, a capstone project, and undergraduate research. When you look at statistics or data of college students nationwide, about 14% experience 3 of the 11 high impact practices, and about 3% experience 6 high impact practices in their undergraduate experience. The Bonner program has integrated 7. So they're really looking at how can we, get the most for these students over the time that they're with us, right? And when you look at these high impact practices, what you'll notice is that most of them combine both kind of academic learning with social connections and relationships. And thinking about first generation students coming from lower socioeconomic backgrounds, traditionally underserved populations, those social connections and networks are especially important for them to persist and graduate in higher education. The slide changed. Hold on. Okay. So because the Bonner program is a program that started nationally in 1990, it's at 65 campuses nationally. They've actually done a lot of research and tracking over those 30 years plus that it's been in existence. And so some of the information that is on this slide shows over a longitudinal study of what they've discovered in tracking students from their first year, their midpoint in the program, as seniors in the program, and then later as alumni. What are they feeling about the program? What do they think the long-term impacts are, etc. And so they actually have a lot of data to pull from, but these are some that I think really demonstrate impacts on students both when they're a student and then after, right? After they graduate, and what we can appreciate as community members. So Bonners are more likely to persist in their college education and graduate. They're more likely to have a stronger sense of belonging on campus and the broader community. They're more likely to understand more about the history, traditions, and challenges confronting the community surrounding the college. They're more likely to respect and appreciate people's diverse social identities, to have an advantage in finding meaningful employment, to go on to pursue an advanced degree. And this is typically a group that has a far lower percentage of pursuing advanced degrees. To develop an interest in finding a career path where they can contribute to the well-being of society, and they're more likely to remain civically engaged after graduation. One of the, in the longitudinal study that covered like 10 years of Bonners, one of the quotes that the researchers have at the end of that, I think really says a lot about the meaning of the program. The study's findings suggest that the core experience is not the service itself, but the sustained dialogue across boundaries of perceived difference that happens during the service and in reflection along the way, including with people students serve, with the people they serve alongside of, with their supervisors at the service site, with the college staff, and centrally with their peers. Peers may offer the most challenging but supportive company with whom to make sense of pressing moral, economic, social, and political dilemmas. So having this cohort-based program and having the time and doing meaningful activities together, the students build a bond in which they can really talk about things that are meaningful, that are hard, that are, you know, really difficult, and having conflicting opinions based on their very different backgrounds and life experiences and academic interests. But in the end, it's those conversations that they had to wrestle with together that make the lasting impact on their lives. So we've talked a lot about the impact of the program on students, but because this is a program that's really grounded in community engagement and time out in the community, it also has pretty strong implications for impacts on campus and impacts on community. So looking at this, you can see how it moves from the individual out to programs, out to organizations, and finally out to systems that are in place. And so you can see on a campus level, kind of starting at the bottom at the individual level, you're developing and engaging students' knowledge, skills, values, and collective action. Moving out to the program level, you develop and integrate community engaged learning courses and programs. Out to the organizational level on campus, to build a campus center that leads efforts to make place-based community engagement deep, pervasive, integrated, and developmental. And finally, out to the systems level of leveraging Bonner Network as a community of best practice and resource for higher education locally and nationally. On the community side, starting again with the individual level, you're mobilizing students, faculty, staff, and community members to support individuals and places. At the programs level, to train and support leaders who develop and manage evidence-based programs and projects. At the organizational level, to provide capacity building support for organizations to improve effectiveness, efficiency, and resources. And finally, at the systems level, to provide capacity building support for collaboratives to achieve measurable community and systemic change. So this program, while in its first kind of inaugural year, has 6 students. Each year, a new cohort can enter, right? And so most campuses have between 5 and 40 students in each cohort. So we're aiming for like 12. That's our goal, right? To have 12 students and to be serving within the first 4 years to have about 48 students at any given time, working through with the juniors and seniors serving as mentors for the freshmen and sophomores coming up to give guidance and support as they enter. So in order to reach that goal and begin to really experience these impacts throughout both students, out to campus, and out to community, we're looking at both sustainability and growth. So for Vibrant Hawaii, how we look at capital is really looking at individual, natural, financial, and social, right? These are the buckets that we talk about. And so the ones that for this program, to sustain it into next year, for these students to go on to their second year and be able to shift from kind of this direct service mode into a more leadership role and do, you know, the next level of activities, as well as to welcome the next cohort in and continue this right into the future. We're looking for 2 things, right? And that's what we kind of ask for you to help us with. The first one is funding, like pretty much I think every program that has talked on this is funding is essential in order for us to be able to pay the students and allow those that are unable to just volunteer to still get these deep and meaningful learning experiences that can help them far beyond their college experience. The second one, though, is actually community partnerships. And so we partner with organizations that have capacity at different levels. Some have capacity to have like one person come and help them at a time. Some have capacity for a group, the whole cohort, to come and go through a volunteer experience together. And then some have capacity to also take on and mentor interns, right? That want to do capstone projects, that want to develop those with the community organization, which can also be a government office, it could be a school, and look at what are the needs of the community, how does that mesh with particular students' passions and academic pursuits and career goals, and what kind of projects can they create together and implement throughout their junior and senior years. So both of those are the things that we're really looking for. And that concludes our presentation. We do would love your feedback. And so let me see if I can put into the chat. If you go to menti.com and enter 441-11447. And I don't know if we want to do that before Q&A or do Q&A first.
Let's go ahead and do the Mentimeter first, and then we'll jump into Q&A. Mahalo.
Yeah, so we have community enabling, accessible, connected, community-based, equitable, engaging, immersive, community work, and community-oriented, scalable, holistic, grounded on Aina. Mahalo, everyone, for taking a minute to contribute.
Mahalo, Julie and Maile. That was a fabulous presentation. Thank you so much for coming today and sharing with us about the Bonner program and your inaugural cohort. Super interesting and exciting to hear about. We're going to open up the floor to questions. Does anybody have any questions for Julie or Maile this morning?
Thank you, Julie. Now I know what you do when you're not volunteering for Vibrant Hawaii. So I have lots of questions, but I'll start with this one. For the GEAR grant, I know that they were asking for an innovation, something new, and it sounds like this program was in existence for a while. You said since the 90s. So I missed, what was the new, I mean, it's a wonderful program, but how could you, like, I know you had to write it in a way that it looks new. So what was the innovation?
So the Bonner program doesn't exist anywhere in Hawaii. So it is a program that started really on the East Coast. And like this summer, we'll be taking the students to New Jersey, of all places. Around Princeton is where it kind of was founded originally. And then so they can meet other Bonners and really see what students who've gone through this program, they have alumni there as well, and what it looks like at universities where it's been going for years and years and years and has developed. So we're looking forward to that. So here in Hawaii, we don't have any programs of this nature. And one of the things I really liked about it is that when I initially talked to, the heads of the organization, it was a matter of how much can we tweak it. They have developed a lot of curriculum, a lot of best practices, a lot of things. But as we all know, what works in one place has indications for what it can do in other places, but it's not necessarily going to be a direct transfer. And so when I talked to them, there was a lot of like, how can we adapt this? How can we, make it work here for our student population, for our community and what they are looking for. So like our community has a lot of small, we don't have a lot of large corporations, right? They're small. And the nonprofits are the same. And so there's not a lot of capacity there. And so working with that environment and kind of tweaking what they might do in other places to make it work for our community as well. So they considered it innovative just because it doesn't exist here.
Yeah, thank you. I had missed that. I thought it had been here
No,
since the 90s.
I had a quick question. It may have went over my head. So for this program, is it something to be applied for or to be selected?
So this will probably evolve a little bit over time. So for this year, one of the suggestions of the national program was to actually not start with freshmen our first year, but to start with sophomores and juniors so that they would have a little bit more maturity under their belts. And we would start with kind of designing a 2-year program, then a 3-year program. And then they would have the opportunity to mentor as we started with kind of the full 4-year program, the new ones. So we opened it to sophomores and juniors, and we sent word out to faculty, to advisors, to a lot of people just kind of on campus who we know work closely with students, and asked that they share it out with current students that they thought might be interested. And so then there was an application process that wasn't nearly as rigorous as what a lot of universities do. They have some serious application processes. But we did an interview. Basically, we kind of looked, I think we interviewed pretty much everybody who applied. We wanted to talk with them. And one of the things we found is that there was one question that we gave them ahead of time, which was to share with us 2 or 3 community organizations that they would be interested in working with, should they be accepted into the program, and why, like what resonated for them. And that turned out to be really the key question, because the ones who hadn't done their research, who hadn't really thought about it, they kind of weren't accepted. And the ones who they'd done their research, they could talk about the mission of these organizations, and their face kind of lit up. Like you could just see it in how they talked about it. Like they would just like get excited to work with these organizations. And so that's how we selected the students. They don't necessarily have the best GPA. They don't necessarily have, other things that some call for, but they had that spark. And that's really what we went on. And I really couldn't be happier with our group. They're special. Yeah. Does that answer your question?
It does actually.
Yeah.
And it actually leads to my to my second question,
Yeah.
actually about like partnerships. So you mentioned that you would need this program would like further support not only in funding but also in community partnerships. So I guess what I want to ask is like, what are you lacking in that particular area, and what do you mean by that? Like, what do you
Yeah.
mean by you need more help with partnerships?
So for the gear application, you have to have some partners. And what we did, we actually partnered with Vibrant Hawaii. So Janice is one of our partners, as well as Toby Taniguchi from the business sector and Bob Agris from the governmental sector. So we thought it would be really helpful to have these three like perspectives as thought partners. So those three help us as thought partners of thinking through what is important from their perspectives that students learn as they go through this program. What are some of their needs in the community? What can work best for them? What's problematic for them? So trying to shape it based on that. So those are thought partners, but other partners are really like one of our partners is Hope Services. And they, because it's a little bit larger organization, they have the capacity to take our whole group and work with them. So they came as a guest speaker, talked, right, met the students, had that initial connection. Now a group is going, actually in 2 weekends, they're going to go and do some direct service that they're helping to plan together and work on that. So they'll have that experience, but they also have capacity for interns. And so if there's a student that really wants to do further work with them, they've started that relationship and kind of opened that door. On the opposite side, like Volcano Precious Plastics is a really small organization who's trying to do a lot more in the environmental realm, right? So we have a student who's really interested in that. And I should pause and say, all of this starts with the students. So we look at like, what are they interested in and build from there. So we have 2 students who are particularly interested in environmental issues, 2 that are particularly interested in homelessness, and 2 that are actually really interested in, and we're kind of like trying to figure this out. They're really interested in how you keep Hawaii having its primary people that it serves be its residents as opposed to tourists. So they're trying to figure out like where, can they connect into those conversations and that work.
And if I can add to that, Julie, for those of you guys who have read Malcolm Gladwell's book, The Tipping Point, he talks a lot about connectors and the importance of connectors in our community. And that's really what it is, right? Is because if this is starting from the ground up with students and what their interests are, we can have, as members of the Bonner program, as many community and campus connections as possible. But the more diverse that range is and the more connectors we have involved, we're better able to connect students with organizations that they're passionate about, and hopefully in turn will be able to do internships and capstones with. So it's about us being able to provide content in the early years in terms of those workshops and the contextualized learning. But in the long run, it's about being able to have those connections so that we can connect the students with those groups and have it as be diverse as possible so that we're meeting the students' interests.
Beautifully said.
Is the cost of the program linearly increasing with the size of the cohort? Or is there some overhead and over time with experience, is it possible to expand the cohort without expanding the cost at the same rate? Or
Yeah, that's a great question. So the first, you're right. So the more students you have, that cost per student, right? There's a per student kind of cost. But you have other things like this year we've kind of purchased some supplies, right? Because when students are doing environmental work, they need boots and rain jackets, and we work to make sure that they don't have to purchase any of their own stuff, okay? Because we can't have that expectation. So we've purchased some of that that belongs to the program. And so some of those supplies the cost will decrease. And the cost of the coordination will kind of stay at the same level at a certain point. So when you go from like the first cohort to the second cohort, it doesn't double in cost because the same coordinator cost is for the first cohort to the second cohort. Yeah, to the third and the fourth as well.
And so what's the cost per student right now? I don't know if you're not allowed to say or.
No, it's that I was just calculating it a couple days ago, and now I'm not going to remember what it was, but I can let you know. It's actually not huge because it's, I can say, so they work 10 hours a week. That's what they commit to the program. It's supposed to be 10 to 12 hours that they commit. They earn $14.90 an hour. And then we also, have some supplies and some travel costs because we do try to encourage them to go to the Summer Learning Institute in New Jersey. It's not a requirement, but an optional thing for students. So they see that bigger picture of the program and meet alumni and network with other students with similar interests.
Thank you.
I have a question. So in that, I know you guys talked about sort of impact that the students might have like on the campus and hopefully on the broader community. Can you speak a little bit about what your sort of aspirations for this first group and how, because it's, if you think about it, as you start off, when it gets to like 48 students at any one time, then it becomes, that much more impactful. But how do you see these 6 students really being impactful to the UH campus and to the community?
Yeah, that's a great question. So it's interesting because they already have started, like, as we went from fall semester to spring semester, I was kind of trying to like gently push them out of the nest a little bit, right? Because they were so tight. Like this group really bonded. And I think some of that was due to COVID as well. I think students were really looking for connection and needing that, maybe more than in other situations. So they bonded a lot. And then they started talking to, this was not something I expected. They started talking to their professors about it and asking their professors questions and things like that. So I've gotten some emails from people saying like, what are you guys doing? And how, can I connect in different ways? So that's been an interesting part that I didn't necessarily anticipate. But for me, it is twofold. The first part I found is that when I started working to connect faculty to community, I found that was a really challenging connection to make sometimes. Whereas when you connect students to community, I think it's because there's less ego, there's less kind of identifying yourself as an expert. And what we're really trying to do is help to see and value the wisdom and expertise that exists in our community, right? That can contribute to the campus. And so we've discovered that doing kind of this pathway instead of directly to faculty, of doing to student and then faculty, is actually more effective than trying to do that kind of direct connection. Sometimes it works. Like we have faculty who are doing awesome stuff. But for those who haven't done that before, it's a little bit of a jump for them. The second is that, so that goes to say that my ultimate hope is that we have kind of a mindset shift on our campus of seeing community and the campus as really being partners in the education of our students, right? And that's not how higher education typically functions. But it's something we're seeing evolve in higher education because there is a push for universities to really show how they are directly contributing to the community. They have to really prove that, right? To get state funds, like, what are you doing? How are you, benefiting this community that you're in? So I think that kind of mindset shift is one that a lot of universities are seeing is essential and is beneficial, because the more you understand what's going on in your community, the more that your education is preparing students in a really direct and clear way. Yeah. If you become out of touch, and with the change that's happening so quickly in our culture today, like, that's easy to do. Actually, it's easy. In 10 years that you've been out, teaching, you could be completely not really hitting home what students need today. So, but I also think a lot about, in our community and these small organizations that are trying to make an impact and simply don't have the capacity to have paid internships, to have, some of these things. So the support that we can provide of saying, like, here, we're paying for it, and we are providing students with some of this context and these workshops to help them grow and learn. And you're going to contribute just as you and what you know from a community perspective. I think the reaction that we've gotten from the community is really positive, that is so helpful for them, right? So if it's a 1 or 2 person, kind of effort to have a student who's enthusiastic and is longer term, it's hard to have somebody come in and intern for 10 weeks. It's really challenging. That's a lot of effort going out. But if you have somebody for like 2 years, that's different, right? They can really learn and understand some of the problems and challenges, and whether their project or their capstone might be building a website or helping with marketing or helping with training more volunteers, or creating pathways for other people to engage and support, or whatever their area is. So I think that element, if we can have the university really seeing as contributors in that very concrete way, I think that's positive, not only for the students and their learning, but also for our community. That was really long-winded, Tamia, I'm sorry.
No problem. Mahalo for that, though. Yeah. Does anybody else have any last? I'll take one more question. We have about 5 minutes left in our meeting this morning. No.
Thank you, everyone. I appreciate your.
Yeah, so yeah, mahalo Julie, mahalo Maile. Super interesting, and we wish you luck in your program, and I'm excited to learn more about what you folks and your students are doing in the future as you guys roll that program out at UH. The last thing on our agenda for this morning is I just want to put a call out to all of our participants. Does anybody else have any other announcement, community events, or anything that you'd like to share with the group before we close? Yes, Rachel.
Just quickly, the other effort on digital equity is starting a computer refurbishment capacity for Hawaii Island. So we have hired somebody who could help our program and connect with Hawaiian Hope, who runs the computer refurbishment and donation capacity in Oahu, to kind of have a foothold here. And so we hope to be able to accept donated equipment and be able to refurbish them to be reused by students and potential students. Mahalo.
Mahalo, Rachel. Anybody else have any other announcements?
I have an announcement, but it's something that I'm just figuring out. So it's kind of just a teaser. So it's Anu Dauphine from Big Island Farms shared with me that there's a worldwide expert in permaculture. Her name is Penny Livingston, and she's coming on island to give a class at their location there up there in Honuka'a. And so she, I'm gonna try and find out more, but she is wondering if I could announce this program, and also maybe they can have an extension while she's on island and offer another class with reduced price for Vibrant Hawaii, since she's already here. So just stay tuned. And if you're interested in permaculture or know people who are, I'll put you in touch with Anu. Does
Mahalo,
anybody knows about this more than I do, or no?
Nope, but we will keep looking for that announcement from you.
Okay.
Anybody else? No. Well, mahalo nui everyone for being with us today. Our next meeting, our next community meeting will be on April 27th from 10 to 11:30. And we hope to see you guys back at that time. We will look out for our newsletter and our announcement as we move forward with planning about our next guest presenter. And mahalo to all of our conveners for giving us updates. Mahalo Julie and Maile and Ku'uhiako for being my IT person. Wishing everybody a wonderful end of weekend and take care, and we'll see you next time. Mahalo, aloha.